Hello, everyone. As the clock goes off in the background, that beautiful tune is Madam Pfeiffer's inauguration. How fitting, huh? The tune and the dance by the same title. The composer is Dave Weisler. The choreographer is Joseph Pimentel. The band is Cold Crest. Dave Weisler, Darren Douglas, Paul Orest. Uh, this is something really super cool. It was recorded live Spring Dance Weekend 2019. It's not released commercially. So you heard it here. Wow, such a beautiful tune. And we are posting a link for the video of that dance if you'd like to go afterwards and watch it. I'm Darlene Hamilton, and we are the Historical Tea and Dance Society. On the team, we have Lindsay Verbal assisting with the program and managing media and attendee questions. We have Reed Wilson on Zoom, and he is grabbing all your questions out of the chat boxes, and he is posting for you in Zoom. And we have Larry Hansen on Facebook Live. Hooray! Larry went through a lot of work to get here tonight, so we're really happy he's with us. Thank you so much. It wouldn't be the same without you, Larry. So thank you for being here. He is posting on Facebook Live. He is handling the chat box there. So if you have questions, and they are an important part of this and the after talk, please feel free to ask them, and we will grab them all. If we don't answer them in the web chat, we will get to them in the after talk. So go ahead and post away while they're on your mind. And definitely stick around for the after talk. If you registered on Zoom, you will have already received that link and maybe even already registered for it. So good for you. If you haven't, we will be posting it at the end of the talk. So just keep your eyes open and grab it from there. And a big thank you to Karen Axelrod and all her friends for her concert every Tuesday live on Facebook. Thank you, thank you, thank you. What a wonderful concert today and every Tuesday. So, wow. I'm going to go right into a brief bio on our guest tonight, and then we're going to get right to introducing her and bringing her up. Gaye Fifer discovered Contra dance in 1979, and she has not stopped dancing since. She became a caller and has now taught Contra, waltz, and English country dance at many, many dance weeks and weekends throughout the country and beyond. After 15 years of dancing, she also became an organizer, serving on her local dance community, running a dance weekend, sitting on the Country Dance and Song Society board, and now serving as their president. Please welcome Gaye Fifer. We are so happy to have you with us. I think she's coming up. There she is.
Yes,
Hi.
and I'm happy to be here too. And before I even do anything, I want to thank Darlene and Lindsay and the whole team for putting these on week after week after week, keeping us connected and giving us things to think about and learn about. So I appreciate all you're doing.
Thank you.
And I just have to say, I feel so fortunate to be part of this dance and music community. It has enriched my life in so many ways. And it's nice to take time to appreciate that.
Thank you. Yes, I fully agree. Let's jump right into the things. Thing one is timing.
So I do feel like I'm preaching to the choir quite a bit tonight, or to the dancers, because you all know how important timing is too. But for me, my first experience of dance led me to see how much joy there is in matching my movements to the music. And I walked into a dance. I was introduced. Well, let me start at the beginning. I came from a non-dancing family. Although my family appreciated music, I grew up with a father who told me I was genetically clumsy, and they didn't dance, and none of us danced. It wasn't until I went to college I took a ballroom dance class for my PE credit. Enjoyed it very much, but I still didn't really think of myself as a dancer. And it wasn't until I was introduced to Contra dancing that I felt that I found my community. That was in St. Louis, Missouri, about, actually over 40 years ago now. A boyfriend at the time said, I found this new kind of dance and I think you would like it. I went with him and I never looked back. I did go as a participant, and I would say a consumer. I really went for filling my own needs. I went to the dance, I danced every dance, and then I went home. Not even really any social connection. I would say that dancing filled a specific need at that time in my life, which was for physical and probably mental exercise as well. I do remember everybody being about my age, and a lot of times when I go to dances, people are still mostly about my age. But I liked it so much that we did have a contra dance at our wedding. So in St. Louis, I was able to get the local caller, who some of you might know. Peter Lippincott is his name. He was the local guy at the time, and he came and called, and the musicians came and played, and we had a wedding dance there in St. Louis. And then I moved to Virginia, and probably not surprisingly, one of the first things I did was to look and find a local contra dance community in Virginia, because it was something that I knew would help me entertain myself in a way to connect with new people in a new community. I will also say that I enjoy singing, and I do feel like singing is kind of magical in the same way as dancing, particularly when you're doing harmonies. It is about everybody being in the right place at the right time. So when I moved to Charlottesville, Virginia, I also started the Charlottesville Women's Choir, which was a small group of women. That was over 40 years ago, and they are still singing. I think right now there are probably 45 women in the choir. But that gave me some joy and pleasure in this area of timing as well.
And I think that brings us to thing number 2, connecting.
This is, if people know me, they know that this is one of the most important parts of my personality. And I think it's also a very natural progression from enjoying the timing and being in the moment with the music to realizing that there's pleasure, satisfaction in being connected with other people, not just moving alone with the music, but connecting with hands, with eyes, with our intention to create a space for each other and a moment in time when we're really present. So connecting with other people in the dance became more important to me. And while I was in Charlottesville, I learned to be a caller. Jim Morrison, probably some of you know him, still lives in the Charlottesville area, and he offered a caller's workshop. I think I did it mostly as a personal challenge. I wanted to grow in my experience of the dance. It was a way to give back, and I think signified that I was more invested in the community itself. So this was actually not my first calling gig. When I started calling, I had just enough attention, and all of you new callers probably remember or know this, just enough attention to make sure I was calling the next move in the dance. And I was very focused on getting those words out for the moves. But the longer I called, the more I learned to be able to pay attention to the dancers as well and to connect with the music and the musicians. I will say that yes.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. No, please, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No,
Please go ahead.
Okay. I started calling locally. The way we did it in our community was to have all the new callers call 1 or 2 dances in an evening, and then graduate to calling a half an evening or a whole evening, and then started to call little local dances around the region. It wasn't. I think what my big break was that somebody came from DC to our local dance in Charlottesville and then said, "Oh, would you consider coming up to dance to call in DC?" So my calling career was never from self-promotion, but from people hearing me call and asking me to come and call for them. I think maybe we have a video of what it's like now for me to call at a dance weekend. Pretty exciting. It makes me want to dance. So one thing I would say about that, you didn't even hear me calling in that dance. And I think this is one of the things that I've come to realize with time is that my job as a caller is not to be the main entertainer and not to control the experience, but rather to facilitate the experience for everybody else.
And yeah, I'm going to jump in here. I love
Okay.
that. I love that attitude. I think that's a really key thing. It must be for a caller. You certainly are a popular caller around the country. What are some other tips you might give to people out there? Because we get a lot of questions saying, you know, what are those things? And we've had some callers on, but everybody has a little bit different twist on it. So
I do think everybody has their own style and their own perspective on what's important. And so I don't believe at all that the way I do it is the only right way. I think the one thing that's very important to me is teaching clearly. And I was a kindergarten teacher for almost 30 years. So I think I know how to say things clearly and concisely and simply. But let me say at the same time, you don't want to talk down to the dancers. So I don't talk to dancers as if they're 5-year-olds. I talk to them as if they're my friends and my community. The teaching is really key. If you teach well, you don't have to do much once the dance starts. And I think the other thing that's very important is the caller attitude or the caller presence. The more I am relaxed and happy about sharing a dance, the happier and more relaxed the dancers are. So my presence, my being comfortable and happy to share, I think makes all the difference. I think those are the 2 most important.
that's great. Thank you. Yeah, wonderful tips. Wonderful tips. And I don't know your mentor, Jim Morrison. Yeah. What was the most important thing you learned from him?
Well, first I'll tell you a little about who Jim Morrison is. You have heard, I'm sure, of Owen Morrison, and Jim is his father. So Owen and his brother and sister grew up in a very musical dance family. I think Jim was involved with music and dance. Well, when he was in college, maybe he started dancing up in New England. Some other people probably know this better than I do, but he was very involved with CDSS. I think he was the one that was responsible for CDSS beginning a family week at camp. And he also was instrumental in starting the dance community in Charlottesville. But I think the thing I learned most from Jim is that there's no way to learn how to call except by doing it. That you just have to get out there and do it. And the more you call, the more you will be competent and confident and relaxed about calling.
I think that's great advice. Yeah, thank you. That's cool. No, I did not know that background. I love that. The other thing I wanted to ask you about briefly was I loved when we were talking in our tech rehearsals that you said that you took it as a personal challenge and a way to give back to the community. And I was wondering if you might talk about that a little bit, possibly. Or are we leading right into that? Yes, we are, maybe.
Well, it is coming up, yes.
So should we lead into thing number 3?
Sure.
All right, great. We'll do that. It's one of my favorites. Thing number 3, community. And can I just say for just a minute, these cards, these titles are obviously signs of a good caller because they're very concise. I like it.
Great. Well, this also kind of fits my whole progression from coming to dance to starting to call and then being more aware of the sense of all of us working together. Not at this point, not just the dancers, not just the musicians, and not just the caller, but all of us together and on and off the dance floor. So at this point in my life, it became clear to me that this was more than just a form of personal entertainment. It was really, I'm going to say, a way of life, because that sounds a little dramatic, but it really did affect how I looked at my life. In fact, I come from a long line of ministers. Some of you know that too. And I decided not to join a church as an adult. And I will say that my parents were a little bit concerned about that, not for any religious reason, but because the church was where they got their sense of belonging and their sense of community. When they came to a dance with me and realized that I have that community in dance and music, they weren't worried anymore. So it was important for me to recognize that this was a place I could find that sense of belonging. Oh, there we are. This is in Pittsburgh. So this is our local dance in Pittsburgh. And when I moved to Pittsburgh, I right away found the dance community and figured out ways that I could contribute. It took me a while. I will say I danced for about 15 years before I realized that somebody had to do work to make the dances happen. And I'm going to attribute that realization to my partner, Wayne. We did a 15-year long-distance relationship. We met at a dance weekend, but then he lived in Pittsburgh and I lived in Charlottesville. We did that for 15 years. But he was involved with his dance committee in Pittsburgh. And it made me realize, oh, I bet there's a dance committee in Charlottesville, and maybe I should help make sure that something happens there, or that I contribute to that community. So I started by getting onto my local dance board and helping with local organizing. We had an annual dance weekend, so I started serving on committees. Actually, I started by doing the Sunday morning brunch fruit, which was not a big commitment, but it gave me a sense of everybody doing their share, their part to help make it all happen. I did eventually take on chairing our local weekend. I'm going to tell a quick story. Probably some of you have been in this position too. I decided to take on chairing the weekend because everything was so well organized and it was going to be an easy job. And then I got a call about 2 weeks before the weekend saying that the venue was no longer available. We'd have to find a new venue. This is the organizer's life, right? That you have to be able to figure things out that come up unexpectedly and deal with them. So I learned a lot by working in the dance community, doing that organizing. And then I found out about CDSS when I was living in Charlottesville. And this was just an extension of my wanting to give to the local community, that CDSS was serving a wider community and I could help in that organization as well. Maybe I'll just take a minute to talk a little bit about how the board is structured, if that's all right. Okay. So right now we have 22 board members. It's always been between 20 and 25 since I've known about it. We are a geographically diverse group, and we try to keep a diversity of interests. So there are English country dancers and callers and Contra dancers and callers and musicians and organizers and singers. So we have a variety of interests on the board and a variety of ages. So we try really hard to have young people represented on the board. Let's see, we work together. We get together once a year in person, although this year it was virtual. And in between our annual meeting, we work on committees and task groups and on Zoom calls and phone calls to do the work of the organization to promote the mission of CDSS. And I have to say that my excitement about being on the board is because everybody else on the board is so passionate and engaged and involved with the work that we do. I think I'll talk a little bit more about CDSS later, but no, that's good. That's good.
Yeah, I was going to bring up a question, but maybe I'll wait until later for that question. However, one thing that's kind of interesting, because I know community is such an important thing to you. I feel like a kindred spirit there. You have experience sort of taking a community and taking it traveling with you and creating expanded community. Can we hear a little bit about that? Because that sounded really cool.
Sure. We did, once I started traveling more to dance, there were opportunities to travel overseas as well. And sometimes we went and made our own group. So, for example, in going to St. Croix or going to Hawaii, we kind of stay in our own group and dance with each other, which I'm not complaining about. Those were lovely trips. I was able to go to Costa Rica, and one of the things we did in Costa Rica every night was to go into the local village and invite local people to come and dance with us. So it was a chance to share our joy in dance with the locals there. And they also taught us their dances. So it was really a cultural exchange. And then I also got to go to New Zealand. Some friends of mine in North Carolina had organized, they did an every other year trip to New Zealand. I think they went 7 times. And each time they went, they would take 30 people, including callers and musicians. We would travel around on a bus for 3 or 4 weeks. And we would stop in a local town, drop our things off at the hostel, and walk around town and invite locals to come and dance with us. because of my religious background, I can say this. It's a little bit like dance missionary work. We were sharing something that we believed in and thought would be great fun for the locals. I will say that because of those trips to New Zealand, there are now 3 ongoing dance communities in New Zealand that are there because we came and danced with them. It was a way to pass on our pleasure in what we were doing.
Wow, that's so great. That's wonderful, and they're still dancing there. I love that. You know, I think this is where, I did ask about giving back to the community and such. And is there anything, you're involved with so much CDSS and your own community. What would you say to the people that haven't taken that jump to get involved?
Wow. Well, it has enriched my life to be more connected with the work that gets done. I think there's nothing wrong with just going to a dance and dancing. And so I'm not making any judgments about what people need to do. And we're all at different places in our lives. But for me, it was a natural step after I'd had so much pleasure from the dance and from my friends there. It just made sense to me to try to do something that would help the community. And I think the more connected you are personally to the people in your community, the more you want to do that. Right? So if you're just going as an individual and going home right after the dance, you don't necessarily feel any pull to help make that happen. But the more I could see what organizers had to do, the more it made sense to help them out.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. I think we're going to jump into thing number 4.
All right.
Anticipating.
This is one of my other favorite words when it comes to dance. I think dancing is generally more satisfying for everybody when we are all anticipating what comes next. So I talk about this in beginner workshops when I teach beginner Contra workshops, and I talk about it when I teach waltz, that what makes transitions smooth and seamless is when we are already thinking about what's going to come next, instead of stopping and then having to think and then having to move. So I especially think about anticipation when I think about waltz. I'm going to tell you my quick story about starting to teach waltz. When I met Wayne, he was already very much interested in waltz. And so it was a fun thing for us to do together. We went on a trip to Denmark, the 2 of us, and Wayne was so enamored with waltzing that he carried a metronome with him. And whenever we were waiting in a train station or an airport, he would play the metronome and we would practice waltz moves. In fact, in my traveling to come and see him in Pittsburgh, he would often dream of new waltz moves. And then when I got to Pittsburgh to visit, he would say, let's try this move. I dreamt this move. I think it'll work. So we did lots and lots of waltzing together just for the fun of it. On this trip to Denmark, the organizer of the trip watched us waltzing everywhere. And she was an organizer of a dance weekend back in Richmond, Virginia. So when we came back from our Denmark trip, she knew I was a school teacher, and she knew that I was a teacher. And so she figured if anybody could offer a waltz workshop, it would be the 2 of us. So that was how we got our first gig, teaching waltz at a weekend. And we've now been doing that for 17 years. That seems like a long time. So when I think about waltzing, I'm going to tell you what I think is important. And we say to everybody, waltzing isn't about fancy moves or twirls or flourishes. It's really about connecting with the music and connecting with your partner. When I say connecting, Wayne hears communicating, but they are definitely part and parcel of the same thing. If you're really there in the present with your partner, you can hear the communication or feel the communication. So we talk about the importance of clear leads that are on time. And we talk about follows needing to be aware and responsive. So no assumptions about what's going to happen, but anticipating what might happen. I'd like to think that what we do in waltzing is not choreographed. It is really about giving a signal and responding to that signal. And I can tell you that waltzing can be incredibly magical. I know that some of you have been to our waltz workshops before, and we have on our website lots of videos of some of the moves that we've taught or continue to teach. And I don't know if you want to show one of those. It's very short. Okay. Oh, it makes me smile. So on our website, there are beginner moves and intermediate moves and things that you can try out on your own, things that you can look back at after you've taken a workshop and remember what foot was doing what. We do tell people the most important thing is to keep stepping on every beat, no matter what happens. And I think that's true of life in general, not just waltzing. Wayne and I both lead and follow. So when we do a workshop, we can dance with anybody in either role. And actually, there's my daughter dancing with me. And I believe in this picture, she is leading. I think when you try both roles, you learn a lot. So if you've always followed, when you try to lead, you'll find out some things that you didn't know about how to lead. And when you try to follow after not ever having done that before, it's a whole new experience. And I would say that especially in these times, it's more and more important for us to not be doing gendered roles. And so I've had to learn. I am an older person, and so I spent 17 years talking about gents and ladies and men and women, but I am learning how to talk about leads and follows and to encourage everybody to try either role. I will say that there's another little story. I taught two waltz workshops at Form the Ocean, which is a dance weekend that happened out east, and it was a women's weekend. And so there were, I want to say, 50 women that came to the waltz workshop. And I said, how many of you are here because you want to learn to lead? And every woman raised her hand. So it was a new experience for me to figure out how to do a workshop. We had to all switch roles every every once in a while so that everybody could try both roles. And I actually am now convinced that that's really a good way to learn. Trying both roles and seeing how it feels. I think that's that.
I had a quick question that came up in the audience. Rebecca
Yes.
King would like to know, what was Wayne's favorite speed for waltzing?
I can tell you exactly. Our favorite tempo for waltz workshops, our favorite tempo is 120 beats per minute. It's slow enough that we can play and we can see how those twirls and flourishes fit the music. If I'm at an open waltz and we're going to do an hour of waltzing, I love the variety of tempo. But for teaching, 120 beats per minute is perfect. I could also say, I'd love to hear how musicians feel about this, but when I'm teaching a waltz workshop, I will often ask the musicians not to play any crooked waltzes, meaning I always want my first foot to be on the first beat of the music. So if there's an extra measure, my feet get off with the music, and it's harder. Does this mean anything to anybody? It's harder for me to navigate if I can't tell if my first foot is not matching what the music is telling me. So I have had, I'm not going to mention any names, but I have had musicians say to me, "What do you mean crooked? There are 3 beats in every measure," which is true. But when I waltz, I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So when I get to 1, I'm always where the music is telling me 1 is. So I'm not navigating 1 measure at a time. I'm measuring in a little mini phrase. I do want to say that I love crooked waltzes to play with, but they're not so easy to teach with. So I could talk about waltz for a really long time, but I don't need to keep talking about waltz.
Well, we love listening. We really haven't had a lot of people on talking about waltz, so I think that's just fine if you want to tell us a few more things. I'm actually, because I've taught a few people how to waltz myself, and there are always different challenges with brand new dancers, and especially couples. Do you have any tips that you might give to people who are out there in the Zoomerverse? They've got their partner, they're saying, "This is our time, we can finally learn."
I would like to tell a story about Dave Weisler, and I think he's here. I might need permission to tell this story. Dave, do you know which story I want to tell? No? All right, I'm going to do it. I'm going to only tell this story because Dave knows how much I love him. Okay, so the story is Dave and his wife were at one of our waltz workshops. And one of the things we do at waltz workshops is we ask people to switch partners regularly so they don't perfect an idiosyncrasy with anyone. So we were all switching partners a lot. And halfway through the workshop, Dave and Julie came up to me and said, "We can do this move with everybody else here at the workshop, but we can't do it with each other. Can you help us?" And so I did the move with Dave, and it was fine. And I did the move with Julie, and it was fine. And so I brought them back together, and I said, "I'm afraid you don't need a waltz teacher. You need a couples counselor." But I could only say that to Dave and Julie because I love them. However, I will say that if you have, not that Dave and Julie had issues, but if you do have issues with your partner, they will come out when you try to do couple dancing together, right? Because there are issues about having to trust each other, having to listen to each other, having to pay attention and not make assumptions. So it can be challenging for couples to learn to do that together. Makes it easier to be in a class where you're switching partners, so you're not only with that one person. Actually, I can say that Wayne doesn't even like dancing with me all the time because after a while, I know too much of what he's going to do. I do start making assumptions. It becomes more like choreography. So he needs to dance with somebody who doesn't know what all his signals are, so he can see if he's really leading well.
That's a great story. People need a waltz counselor. That's such a great story. Uh, Lindsay, I think we had a question.
We did. Yes. The question was from Dawn, and they were asking, how do you teach anticipation?
That's a good question. Well, I'm not sure that you can teach anticipation in every situation, but when I'm teaching waltz, what I do is I don't teach people to do just a sequence where the follow knows what's going to come next. I teach the leads some options, and so the follow doesn't know what's going to happen. And if the follow doesn't know, they're in that moment of waiting and paying attention to see what's going to happen. So giving the lead some options about how to signal different things allows the follow to practice anticipating. Good question.
Thank you.
You bet.
Oh, that's great. We love talking about waltzing, that is for sure. Well, we'll talk about. I was going to mention something else, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. So,
I just have to give a shout out to all the California waltzers that I have had the pleasure to dance with on my trips out there. You have in various places in California lovely waltz communities and people who really are spending time learning about giving signals and paying attention and being connected.
yeah, and boy, this waltz. Thank you. This waltz question is definitely sparking some comments and questions. So, Lindsay, I'm going to let you bring in another question.
Great. Here's another one that just came in, and it's from Brooke Friendly. The question is, do you also teach follows how to indicate no thank you?
That's a good question. Yeah, in a lead and follow dance, I think generally I would encourage follows to pay attention and follow the lead. But if there is something that is uncomfortable, I actually often teach in my class how to gently refuse a suggestion for a double twirl stay. So if you know that you like to twirl just once and you don't want to go twice, there are ways that you can gently let that be known diplomatically, but taking care of yourself. So yeah, I do think that's important. Good question too.
That's great.
Yeah.
All right, now we're going to move on to thing number 5. And if we have time for some of these other questions at the end, we will, but otherwise it'll be in the after talk. I can
Great.
tell we're going to be talking about this subject. All right, thing number 5. Passing it on.
So I love how this all fits together, right? I mean, it's a trajectory that you start just having your own personal joy and then more and more involving other people and taking responsibility for making it work. Passing it on to me means putting effort into making sure that the community continues and that it doesn't just stop when I stop or when other people stop doing this. So I want to first talk about family camps, which I was introduced to when my daughter was 5 years old. And so we went to camp every summer from the time she was 5. She still goes, actually, and now she's 30. I think in this picture, she's probably about 17 or 18, and we are teaching a song together in sign language. It is so much fun for me to watch at a family camp how participation and skill building and self-confidence are modeled for everyone there. So you can watch the 4-year-olds thinking, oh, I want to be just like that 8-year-old when I grow up. And you can watch the 8-year-olds thinking, I want to be just like those 12-year-olds. But everybody has someone to look at, someone to model themselves after. And it's an incredible culture of participation. Even families who come that have never danced or made music together are sucked into this culture for the week. I would say that Rachel is still connected to that camp community and to the wider dance community. She is now a co-program director of one of the CDSS weeks. She is a singer, a choreographer. Some of you might have danced. She's written a couple lovely dances, one that gets called around the country. She's also a community builder, not just in the dance community, but in the rest of her life. I thought when I took her to dance as a young person, that I was giving her the pleasure of the dance and music and song. But I realize now that it was much more than that. It was also that she values community, that she sees how important community is. And so she creates community everywhere she goes. It's pretty cool. I will say that worked for us. For Rachel and me, family camp was a way to have her be totally involved in this culture. She didn't ever really have an option. Although after her first year at family camp, I didn't have a choice either. We were going to go back to family camp, whether I wanted to or not. So I think growing up in the culture was really critical to involve her. I will say that it's not just being part of the community, but for her, it was also being in a community where there were other people her age. So she wasn't the only young person going to her mother's form of entertainment. She had her own friends and her own connections that were her age. And she saw that dancing was a cool thing for people her age, not just for grown-ups. And not everybody has the option to go to family camps. Although I will say that CDSS is putting more energy into giving scholarships to families. There are more opportunities for family camps these days. I can remember talking to a young man at a dance event. He was the only person I saw there. He was a teenager, like 14 years old. He was the only person his age at the dance event. And to me, that said he must really love what he's doing, because he was putting himself into an environment where he didn't really have peers. So I was able to help him get a scholarship to go to a family dance camp. And it changed his life, really, to know that there were lots and lots of people his age who really valued what he was doing. Rachel, I saw somebody ask what dance Rachel wrote. It's called, let me see, If I Were Dead and It Wouldn't Go to Waste. And I could tell you the story about the title, but we'll do that in the after talk. But I have this incredible relationship with Rachel. It's partly the dance community, but it's partly that she is just an incredible person. And so I think I want to show you what we did recently. It's so much fun. I could tell another story about Dave Weisler. We were at a dance weekend, and I was at the top of the line. I was dancing, and all of a sudden Dave pulled me out of the dance and put me at his keyboard and took my place in the dance. But I didn't play keyboard at the time at all. So it was really pretty embarrassing for me. I think the musicians in the band just kind of pretended I wasn't there. Anyway, it has been such a pleasure, right, to learn to do this with Rachel. Okay, I can talk more about Rachel, but we could do that in the after talk as well. I want to say one other thing, that Rachel grew up believing that dancing and music is what people do for fun. So she still believes that. And I think there are young people who don't get to come at it from such an early age. And they can also still find pleasure and joy in the community. It takes a little more effort, I think, and they have to have people who are their age, their friends, who make it feel like it's their community as well. Okay, now I want to tell you, this is the time in my life where I discovered English country dance. So contra dancing has been over 40 years. English country dancing I was finally introduced to when I went to family camps with Rachel. And that's because they were English and American camps, and everybody danced everything. It was a totally non-threatening, non-judgmental atmosphere. So I got to experience the pleasure, and these are the same things in the timing and the anticipating and the connecting in English country dance. So I started doing English there, and then Joseph Pimentel convinced me to take a English callers course at Pinewoods. At the time, he was offering a course for Contra callers, experienced Contra callers who wanted to learn how to call English. And his theory was that he wouldn't have to spend a lot of time on the basics of calling per se, but he could focus more on how English calling is different than Contra calling. I will say that, this is a perfect picture of what I'm going to say next. I thought that I did not have the right personality to be an English country dance caller. I'm calling English in this picture. And Joseph pointed out that I will always have my personality, no matter what I'm doing. And I learned that if I'm in myself, if I am having pleasure doing what I'm doing when I call English, it's going to be the same thing. Yes, and this is at Heydays, 3 years ago. Anita Anderson and Eric. So I started having more and more fun calling English as well. I will say that coming from years of calling Contra, it was scary initially to try to call English. But I loved the music and I loved the movement so much that it was worth the effort to learn how to do it. I think somebody had asked about the differences between calling Contra and calling English. And I think for me, I have to be much more aware of the music when I call English, partly because there's just so much more variation in meter. So when I call Contra, I don't ever have to think about how many beats are going to be in that phrase. It's always going to be 8 or 16, and I don't have to. I can have that in my body and not have to pay attention to it. But with English, since every tune can have a different meter, I have to know the music better and pay more attention to how things fit in the music. And I think probably most of you would agree that there's a little more precision in timing in English. I think in contra dancing, people can fill up the time with flourishes and extra things, or sometimes they're late, which is really a problem, since my first thing is about timing. But it's much more important, I think, in English to be to use the music to get where you need to be just in time. However, so there are differences, but I think things like timing and connecting and anticipating are all important in both Contra and English. And so I use the skills I developed as a Contra dance caller when I call English as well.
And this is so great listening to you talk about this. We are okay with running a few minutes over. There's no problem with time. We've still got 5 minutes, so don't worry about that. But I definitely want to talk to you about, CDSS, Country Dance and Song Society. So we are not going to end this thing 5 until we talk about that. So feel free to go ahead.
Okay. So CDSS is kind of the culmination of all of these things for me, because it is a way to make sure that on the local level, what we're doing can continue. Callers get paid and musicians get paid, not much. They get appreciation, they get public appreciation, but organizers do all this work really just for the love of the community, feeling like it's important to be able to offer this. So it's really a lot of work. And one of my passions in my work with CDSS is in supporting organizers. So I have taught a course at Pinewoods for organizers, where we had organizers from all over the country come, and we spent 2 hours a day talking about issues that come up in their communities. It's instead of reinventing the wheel, it's really nice to talk together, because a lot of the issues are the same. So a lot of it was just networking and giving people the opportunity to share ideas and resources. I also taught a course for organizers at Heydays when I was there. And I have done organizer workshops at other weekends and have had conversations at meals with organizers just to help people connect with each other. It just makes a lot of sense to me to support organizers in that way. And I will say that CDSS in the past year or so has made a lot more of an effort to support affiliates. So if you ever went to the CDSS website, you could find our resource portal, which has lots and lots of resources. And I mean, you can just see, you could explore all those tabs. One of the things we've done in the past, this is a picture from one of our organizer weekends, where people came and spent the whole weekend talking about organizing too. You could also listen to our web chats, and I know that probably some of you have already listened in on the web chats. They are always archived, so you can go back and look at the ones that have already been done. The most recent one was about singing and playing music in real time online, and there were over 200 people that came to that web chat. So it seems to be filling a need for communities. Something else that we have, well, we have an affiliate newsletter that goes out. We have an online events calendar also on this website, so you can see what online events are happening. And in fact, you can add anything you want. If your community is doing an online event, you can go to the site and add it on here so that people know about it. Cool. I think that I'm going to just say this, my favorite thing now that I'm working on with CDSS is a pilot program. We have 3 designated ambassadors, and the job of the ambassador is to be in touch with all the affiliates in their region. So it's a chance to be a little bit more personal and to have a connection, not just with the CDSS office. Those staff people are incredible, but they can't be personally in touch with every one of the 300 affiliates. So as an ambassador, I can call my 25 affiliates and stay in touch with them and help them feel more connected to each other, like they're not out in the middle of nowhere trying to figure it all out by themselves. and also more connected to the resources that CDSS has. One of the exciting things we're doing now is some cultural equity work. So in my region, my ambassador region, we're having a training on cultural equity, and all the organizers from my region can come to that and then take what they learn back to their local communities. So it's very exciting work, and I love doing that part.
Wow, that sounds great. And what would be a couple of things that if you were thinking, gee, maybe I could help in that way, what does it take to be an ambassador? Is there anything that you're particularly looking for, or the particular good person for that job?
Right now, we have only 3 regions, so there are a lot of regions that aren't getting any ambassador help at this point. But we'd like to expand the program. I think an ambassador has to be somebody who likes talking to people, likes listening to people. It takes a little bit of time to make all the phone calls. But you don't have to be an expert in anything. You just really need to be able to help people communicate with each other. So a facilitator. Somebody asked what the regions are now. We have, just because of the ambassadors we had available, we have a region in the Southeast, Florida, Georgia, Alabama, and then we have a region, the 4 corners, Utah, New Mexico, Arizona, and Colorado. And then we have a region, I don't even know what you call this part of the country, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, West Virginia. Not really mid-Atlantic, but kind of, and not really Midwest, but kind of there in the middle. So yeah, I would love to, if there's somebody from California who says, oh, this sounds like me. I love talking to people. I have some time. I would love to have you contact me and let me know.
Well, let's hope we can make that happen in our audience out there. And there's one more thing I know we're going to talk about just a tiny bit more at the end, which we're coming up to. But the last thing that we were going to show how to get to on the website is where you're having people make a donation to if they're able. So let's talk about that for a minute, and then we'll go into our closing.
Great. So we're rolling out our new Circle of Friends program, and it is really a membership program where you can, instead of just paying once a year, you can choose to donate monthly or quarterly. We think that it will help some people who can't come up with a lump sum once a year. If they can spread it out monthly, that they'll be able to participate. Might even help some people choose to give a little bit more than they are giving. For CDSS, from our point of view, it gives us consistent income over the years. So, and we don't have to spend time and energy asking people to renew or sending out renewal notices or writing notes to people who have lapsed in their membership. So it is more convenient, and we think it's a good thing for the organization. So if you're already a member, you can switch your membership to Circle of Friends and do a monthly or quarterly gift. If you're not a member yet, you can sign up to be in our Circle of Friends.
That sounds great.
Go ahead. I just want to say one other thing. I think, especially in this time of the pandemic, it has become more obvious that CDSS really serves a purpose, that we are really able to help people stay connected and offer resources in a way that, a lot of communities now are looking to CDSS as more of a leader in this sector than they ever did before. So it makes sense to support the work that we're doing.
I agree. It makes sense to support it all the time, but yes, now we have definitely been using your resources. So thank you. And thank you for all the work you do with the CDSS. It's, I'm sure it's a lot of work, and we truly appreciate it. And we're so thankful that you've been able to come on and talk to us. And we have a lot of questions and all sorts of things that we're going to talk about in the after talk. So anybody that didn't get their question answered, please make sure you join us there because we will get to them all. We are going to post some announcements for Gaye. She's going to be at a couple of events coming up, and 2 in particular. So those are getting posted. And there is an upcoming waltz workshop, but we didn't get the information on that. It's not us, but so just stay tuned for that. Let's see. Oh, I can't let you go without what's your favorite dance?
Oh, I have to say, Madam Fifer's inauguration.
I don't blame you. That's great. I love it. And yeah, it's so wonderful to have that nice video to check out. And what a wonderful piece of music at the beginning. Well,
Yep.
Thank you again, Gaye, for being with us. Thank you to my 5 Things team, Lindsay Verbal, and in the background, Ree Wilson on Zoom, Larry Hanson on Facebook, along with our helpers, Kara King, Dan Vilter, and Laura Bartok. Yes. Colin Yumi maintains an accessible index of all our web chats on his website in one place. We also have them on our Facebook main page, and we have them on our YouTube channel. There are now 46 plus this one soon that we have
Wow.
done since March 2020. We had no idea what we were getting into. But big thank you to everyone who's been making a donation to our group to help cover our expenses. Thank you. We really appreciate it. It's, it does help, and we are putting them to work running this show. We are posting the link for the after talk. We have posted, or if you registered, you have a link for our Dropbox where we put the chat. We're trying to get it up as soon as possible nowadays. And if there's anything else, that a guest wants in there. So you can go there and look for those chats and those things that you weren't able to grab out of the text. Coming up next week is Elizabeth Goosen, Liz Goosen. We're looking forward to having her with us. Finally, we have Canada in the house. So coming next week. And then on January 30th, Saturday morning, Pacific, 10 a.m., 1 p.m. Eastern, we are having our Jane Austen and Regency era concert on historical instruments. It's the first time. We are not going into the music business, but we are doing this. We wanted to recreate what it might have been like in Jane Austen's time. So we're looking forward to that. It's going to be on Zoom and on Facebook Live. So sign up for that. Join us on Thursdays for tea time at 5 p.m. Pacific. It's just a fun hour and a half, hanging out with people, talking about silly things or serious things. It's just nice to have a moment where it's like you got to coffee or tea with your friends. For donations, if you wish to donate to our community, Gaye recommends, so do we all, Country Dance and Song Society's Circle of Friends. As she just told you about, we're posting the link for that. The exit music is another wonderful tune, Gaye's Steps. It's by Larry Unger. Thank you very much. We're posting the credit for that, and we will see you all in the after talk in about 2 minutes. Bye, everyone. Thank you, Gaye.